growing up in Long Island, being surrounded by 90% white people and like everyone else who is of color is in your family is Dominican, and then you see like one black person or a handful of black people in the whole town, and it just took. There's a lot of undoing and unpacking there for a long time, especially like self-hate and racism and all these things that you've kind of are you kind of integrate without even recognizing it. So I think it impacted the way that I saw myself in relationship to the rest of them, especially when I got here. You know, when I got here, they had already, my two older sisters already spoke English. They had already developed some sense of like their relationship to what people expected from them. My older sister was super like talkative with everybody and bubbly, and my other sister was struggling and had issues learning how to read, and they definitely isolated her, and she had already begun to struggle within the system. And then when I came to this country, was, like I said, super angry, so I would get into fights, especially the boys, because I just felt like they were being like aggressive towards me or something. And I got into a lot of fights, and I got left back, and then I went to summer school, and that's where I learned English. Within like 3 months, I came back to school and was like, speaking English. Then I spent a lot of, like, unlike my siblings, I had this very deep yearning to not only assimilate, but assimilate better than, you know, I think a lot of immigrants have this, like, be more American, right? This idea of movement, right? And being able to travel and being an immigrant or a migrant and going from place to place, this feeling, there's this, so my family brought me here when I was 7, and I was so angry for a long time about that, because I was, from 0 to 7, I was raised in a village, and I didn't really know either one of my parents. My dad was in jail, and my mom was working like 16-hour days, and I came from a village where I had like so many mothers, and all of a sudden it was, you know, capitalism, and everyone's out doing that. And so I think that at a point where I was the first one in my family to go to college, I had a feeling of independence, not necessarily ownership of my body, but ownership of movement, right? So I could take this body and go where I wanted and do what I wanted. So there was this building up of like, okay, I've come from a place where other people have told me how I should look and what my body can and can't do. And within that, right, you survive it. So once you survive this idea of like what other people want from you and the compromises you make along the way, I think that consciousness or awareness of the compromises that you're making is critical to your path in ownership of your own body. But I think it takes a very long time. It took me until my 30s to really be like, oh, this is my body. I get to decide. Before that, it was more about, okay, I want to go live in Italy, and so I went and did that, and that gave me the space between my family that I hadn't had before. Like when I was in Rome, I was like, I want to go learn about my roots, so I went to DR, spent 6 months down there, like no money, just like got an internship with United Nations Association of the Dominican Republic, and studied down there for 6 months and took a class in Dominican history and did all these things while I was down there. Really wanted to learn, and then flew back to Rome and finished my master's. So it was just like having seen and done Italian culture because of my own yearning to understand my roots pushed me to like return to my roots. So I think that going down there while being in Italy really allowed me to like free myself from these notions that I had before, where it was only the perspective of of the village that I had. Because up to that point, I hadn't had the experience of learning about different classes in Dominican Republic. I had only known my family in this village and didn't know what it meant to be a middle-class Dominican or an upper-class Dominican. And when I went to go do my internship, they sent me to like one of the best schools down there, and I met kids and people from all different stratas of life, and working at the UN over there too. And so, and I lived with all these women who were working at the UN in UN INSTRA, which is the United Nations Organization for the Advancement of Women. And they were from all over the world, Germany and Spain and Haiti. And so there was like, there was this whole opening. It was an eye-opening experience in terms of seeing my culture from a different gaze and a different class and different people, you know, and how enamored and how in love they were with the culture that I had. I think I felt more centered, right, in my own identity and who I was. When I came back to the U.S., it was so that I could be close to my family and figure out what I really wanted to do with my life. I could have stayed in Italy. I was working at the UN as a consultant for the Food and Agriculture Organization. But that was like month to month, which is what they do. They do all these contracts now. And when I decided to come back, there was a disappointment in my family's expectations that once I had gotten this job, you know, just finished my master's, and like I got the job that I wanted and that they like, you know, imagined for me. It was so goddamn boring. I really could not do that. And when I came back, I lived with but nothing had changed over here. And so there are all these like layers to this type of constant migration and in between this, right?